There are some weird things here in Phoenix. When I moved here back in 2015, there was definitely some things I noticed that made me question my decision on moving here. So if you're moving from a different state, particularly a state that doesn't have a desert, there are probably some things you want to know ahead of time. I'm Courtney, I'm a realtor from Real Broker, here to share with you all things Phoenix. Okay, coming in at number one is the landscape. So when I'm talking about landscape, I'm talking about the lack of greenery and the amount of exposure. So Phoenix is a very fast growing area, and surrounding the city, we're having so much new development in these suburbs. It's all brand new construction. So these homes just haven't had an opportunity to grow vegetation or have mature landscaping. So it just kind of gives off this vibe of really deserty or dirt-like. But what really got to me was just the exposure, not having trees, not having shade, and just feeling like you were baking out in the sun. This exposure isn't as problematic for other people, particularly if you're coming from like California or Nevada, but coming from more of a vegetative state, it was definitely a little bit of a shock to my system. So cities that we're seeing a lot of new development, that's areas like Buckeye on the west side, Goodyear as well on the west side, and then Queen Creek, which is on the southeast area. Now, we are seeing new development pretty much across the entire Phoenix metro area, but I will say places like Tempe, Scottsdale, where you see some of these older homes, they tend to have a little bit more mature landscaping, not as much exposure. Even areas like Chandler and Gilbert that have some newer development, you still find a little bit more greenery and it's just a little bit more cheerful. But like I said, for many of you, this level of exposure may not be a big deal at all. The second thing that shocked me when I moved here, you guys, the tap water does not taste good here. Technically, it is drinkable, does meet all federal, local, and state water quality standards. However, the water is just so hard here, so you can just taste the calcium and the magnesium, and it just gives this kind of like bittery, salty taste. So everyone does filter their water here before they drink it. Honestly, once you have a filtering system, it's really not that big of a deal. If you end up owning a home here in Phoenix, it might not be a bad idea to get some sort of water softening system. Your skin and your hair will thank you for that. Water softener also helps maintain the integrity of a lot of your water fixtures as well. The third thing that shocked me is that it gets cold here, like really cold here in Phoenix. So everyone talks about the hot, blistering days in the summer, but no one talks about the fact that it can actually get below freezing in the wintertime. So you live here, you survive a summer, your body acclimates to the heat, and then boom, nighttime in January, it's 40 degrees outside. And you're like, where did I just move to? You guys, the desert gets cold. It gets really cold. So when I moved here, I got rid of all my winter clothing because I was like, I'm never gonna need my parkas again. And then I had to go buy more winter coats. So hold on to your cold weather gear. Do not get rid of it yet, because it's kind of this interesting phenomenon after you move here. Your body acclimates to the heat, and all of a sudden 75 degrees is actually chilly for you. It's sweater weather. Before you know it, you're setting your home thermostat to 79 degrees. Good news is once you acclimate to the heat, okay, the cold days are cold, but the summers are so much more tolerable. Okay, number 4 is that people have a weird coffee obsession, and I'm talking about Dutch brothers or Dutch bros. So I lived all over the country, and this might be the first place that doesn't have a strict obsession with Starbucks. Now there are Starbucks around here, but people highly prefer Dutch bros over Starbucks. So this isn't a popular opinion, but I'm actually not a huge fan of Dutch bros, but I'm definitely a minority, so give it a chance, give it a try. And if it's not your thing, there are a lot of other mom and pop coffee shops that have great espresso drinks. And if you are a Starbucks person, there still are a lot of Starbucks around town. Okay, number 5 is the style of homes. I mentioned before, most of the homes here were built in the past 30 years. It's newer construction. And a lot of them have a very similar aesthetic, tile roof and stucco. Communities in Tempe, Scottsdale, and Midtown Phoenix that do have some older homes, more mid-century. But when you get further out in the burbs, you're gonna see more of this desert or Western style home. However, if you're coming from a Western state like California or Nevada, you're probably used to this style of home. The weird thing about homes here is they don't have basements. And this is just because the clay has so hard for mineral deposits. It's really close to impossible for them to dig a basement. Now, if you're going house hunting and you're used to having a basement, just make sure there's good use of storage and that it will meet your needs. Okay, so now that I talked about these 5 things, I do want to make one remark. When I started brainstorming on what I was going to share with you guys today, I really had to put myself in Courtney circa 2015, because a lot of these things, water, housing, exposure, all these things I'm just so accustomed to now that I don't even really think about. So if any of these things are a concern for you, just keep in mind, you might notice that at first, but once you have a routine here, it just becomes part of life. It is a little bit different living than other areas of the country, but the desert really is awesome. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, Phoenix is amazing. However, it is not everyone's cup of tea. I really want to make this channel a community, so if you have any remarks or questions, please comment below. If you found any of this information helpful, please subscribe. It does help me substantially. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to continue to be your resource for all things Phoenix.